Okay, good evening and welcome to the Prophetic Outlook. We are on with Pete tonight. He's rushing back from work. I was speaking to him earlier, so he'll be on shortly. But before that, I just wanted to jump on because I haven't done a live in a couple of weeks now. So I can see you guys coming on. I can see Caterlin, Sir Pierce DeVille, Hammer Time is here, Joanne's here, Lisa's here. Judy Thomas is here, Sir Pierce DeVille, Kelly, Lisa, Kim, Coco Bear. Guys, as you're coming on, make sure you're saying hi. We will be going, Pete will be on soon. Oh, I hit something there. I was trying to hit down and I hit warning for somebody's comment. I didn't mean to. So, guys, say hi as you're coming on. We're just going to roll our credits here and we will talk about a few things and then Pete will jump on with us. We have loads as per usual to discuss, loads to go through. I keep forgetting where my camera is tonight because I've moved things around. So without further ado, let's just roll our intro. Okay, and welcome again. So we are going to talk about loads of things tonight. We're going to talk about the weather anomalies that we're seeing. We're going to talk about the wars, rumors of wars, conflicts around the world. But I don't really want to go into that too much before Pete comes on. And we had sort of discussed this. This is what both is on both of our minds. And as per usual, there's an awful lot going on. So I will mention that just before we hit live, that obviously you see things kicking off in Syria again. We have seen the IAF, the Israeli Air Force, attacking um, Syria and in defense of the Druze. Now, this to me, and I'll ask Pete about this, but this to me is more and more kind of weight behind the, I guess, the Albert Pike prediction. Um, Now, Albert Pike, we know, was a Luciferian, and I know that there's controversy whether there were letters of Albert Pike to Mazzoni or whether they were fabricated later on. Regardless, the prediction is what I'm talking about, that there would be a third world war that would be primarily religious. It would be religious at its core, and it would be made to be that way. It would start, according to the Albert Pike letters, it would start between the Zionists and the Islamists, and then it would be there to degrade and demolish Judeo Christian principles and religion in essence, and open the path for Luciferianism. Now, that was the agenda that was set out according to the 33rd degree Mason Albert Pike, if those letters are true. And I'm not going to go into the controversies behind them or not. I happen to think there's weight behind this. But regardless of all that, the prediction and the direction of that prediction seems to be what we're seeing at play right now. So we're seeing obviously the jihadis from Syria attacking the Druze people because there's obviously discrimination in terms of the Druze are a separate religion unto themselves. They yes, they believe the Quran is a holy book, but they don't. They're not Muslim, right? They're not Muslim by Islamic standards. They believe in reincarnation. They also believe that God became incarnate. Now, not like we believe God became incarnate in terms of Jesus coming to this earth. They believe it in terms of Al Hakim in 1021 AD, the founder of the Druze people. But we're seeing all of this attack from one side to another based on a religious belief. And what we're seeing is the Israel stepping in, and they're stepping in, I believe, based off a Judeo-Christian principle in terms of defending, as a democracy in the Middle East, defending the right to believe differently than others. So, under an Islamic principle, under a caliphate or anything like that, you cannot believe differently. You cannot certainly express those beliefs. So, we're seeing all of this come to the fore right now. And I'm wondering, is this a push, like I say, towards the Pike rhetoric? So, let me know what you think. Let me know in the comments what you actually think in terms of this. Do you think that we're seeing a kind of push for fragmentation with religion against religion? We could talk about it in terms of the Middle East, but we could also talk about it in terms of the West. We could talk about the deconstruction of the West and the Judeo-Christian principles in the West. Right here in the UK, they under the Labour government, Keir Starmer is seemingly introducing an Islamophobia law, which is effectively a blasphemy legislation, not in defense of Judeo Christian beliefs, but in defense of Islam being introduced into a so called Christian society. Now, to me, that only has one agenda, to cause more and more fragmentation, more and more discord, more and more pitting one side against the other, which again goes along with the Pike rhetoric that the culmination of a World War III will be to eradicate certainly monotheistic religion and replace that with Luciferianism. And so let me know what your thoughts are. Hi, Helen. Guys, as you're coming on, just let me know what your thoughts are. Do you see that we're living in a more disjointed, fragmented society than we have ever seen before? Do you think that it's going to get worse? Do you think that we're heading towards, and we will be discussing this tonight, but do you think that we'll be heading towards a WW3 scenario? Or are we already in a World War III position right now, but it is a different beast than World War I and World War II? So if you take those models, for instance, World War I, we saw different things in terms of warfare, in terms of trench warfare. But we with World War I, it was a different framework. Yes, we saw the sort of signs of the setup, but World War II was different than World War I in the signs of the setup. And then with the increase of technology, it was a different war also. Is this already World War III? In the sense that I heard one analyst talk about World War III being the war of proxies. The war of proxies, in other words, one superpower using a proxy to fight another superpower, and that superpower using a proxy to fight another superpower. Think of it like a game of chess, moving your pawns first to go against the big players on the other side of the board. Is that what we're seeing? Now, I personally am seeing that I think that it's not just going to be war in terms of an external nation versus nation, but one of the things that I see on the horizon is certainly civil discord within nations. And I think we're seeing that right now in the UK. I think that we're seeing the fragmentation, and I'll not go into too much because I know that I want to hear Pete's opinion on all this, but we're seeing the fragmentation of society based upon two-tiered system, a two-tiered system of governing, a two-tiered system of policing, a two-tiered judicial system, and a two-tiered, I guess, approach to religious freedom. And in that setting, I think all that'll do is it'll cause what Jesus predicts, ethnos versus ethnos, right? So where it says nation versus nation in Matthew 24, the real Greek word there is ethnos versus ethnos. And that doesn't even just go to simply race or identity in that way. What it can be is ethnic ideologies. What is your ideology based on eradicating people in front of you? Or is your ideology based on turning the other cheek? What is your ideology? And I think that we're kind of building to this continual sort of like a wave building, right? So like the wave is just growing and growing and growing and growing in size, power, and strength to the point that there's going to be no stopping it. That's my personal belief. I don't know, and it's maybe not a cheery one. And listen, Here's the thing, that when we talk about all this, let me just assure you, we are not doom and gloomers. We believe in the hope of Jesus Christ. And I believe that for every season, God has an anointing for every season. He has an anointing for you. He has an anointing for me. And that anointing is for us to run our race in the midst of the season and the seasonal conditions that we're in. So don't be put off thinking, oh, look, World War III is on the horizon. So we saw today, just before we came on, the 15th of July, that President Trump has decided to basically supply Ukraine with weapons, something that he's sort of backtracked on. And we remember all the fallout with him and Zelensky. But he has said openly now that he is going to supply to European countries who will then supply to Ukraine. He will give European countries these weapons, and these weapons then will go to Ukraine. Now, that to me falls into the proxy model of a World War III, right? It falls into the proxy model that we could be in World War III, but if we're in World War III already, it just possibly looks different than what everybody's expecting, because you're not going to get a World War I scenario where everybody's hiding in trenches. You're not going to get a World War II scenario because technology has taken us further. And now warfare is ever more sophisticated. And Pete will be able to talk into this. So on that basis, if Trump is now, so Trump today turning around and saying, look, we're going to supply these weapons, this increased manufacturing of weapons to Europe, who are going to sell these weapons to Ukraine. The response from Leonid Slutsky from the Russian administration was that this is bringing the world closer. So today's announcement from the White House has brought the world closer to nuclear Armageddon. Now, I don't know about you. Let me know in the comments. Are you seeing the term nuclear or nuclear Armageddon or apocalypse more and more in the headlines? I am, and I think that that is telling, because listen, let me show you this video before Pete comes on. I want to show you a few things. So let me show you this video. This is Peter Thiel, co-founder of PayPal, one of the top billionaires in the world, and this is his opinion.
We have a crazy surveillance state. Why would we, why would we do this? But if you're scared enough of these things, that's the weapon. And this is sort of where my speculative thesis is that if the Antichrist were to come to power, it would be by talking about Armageddon all the time. And
Peter Thiel, the Antichrist would talk about Armageddon all the time. He'd scare people and then offer to save them.
Now, are we seeing more and more rhetoric in which we're hearing the term apocalypse, Armageddon? We're hearing the terms that are basically, they're designed to frighten and cause a weary nature in people. Are we hearing this more and more? Now, I think we are. And I think that is there to do one thing. That is there to acclimatize people to the atmosphere in which the lawless one, the son of perdition, will be comfortable in. He will step through. So if you're going to have a lawless one, a son of perdition, he needs a climate of lawlessness. Like, you all know that I was away there for a couple of weeks. We had a family holiday, but we were also filming for a documentary that we're making, and we were filming it in Italy. And it was 40 degrees there, so about 104 plus. I think the highest I got was about 107 Fahrenheit. I'm an Irishman. You put me in that temperature, in that climate, and I'm not comfortable. But what happens is, I was there for 2 weeks, so you're there for a couple of days and you're struggling with it. You're sweating every time you wake up, and you're going inside to get some fresh air. And then after about 4 or 5 days, you're more comfortable with it. You're more acclimatized to it. You're used to it. And as you're used to it, it's not bothering you so much. And as that's the case, then you kind of just go, right, okay, then now the temperature's dropped a little bit. So it did drop the last couple of days. And then we went, oh, it's a little bit chilly. Now, it wasn't chilly, but it's just because you get used to the temperature. And that's the same thing for the enemy. For him to bring his man onto the scene, he needs the world acclimatized to being always in a constant state of fear, panic, worry, anxiety, stress. Now, here's the thing, every single person in the world, every single person will experience that and feel that. The antidote to that are for those who have their faith and their hope and their trust in Jesus Christ. And we know where our destination is. We also know that even though we may go through the valley of the shadow of death, we fear no evil. He is with us. His rod and his staff, they comfort us. Now, the rod and the staff were used by the shepherd to do what? To keep the wolves away, to keep the enemies and the attackers away from the flock. And this is what we have to realize, is that when we walk with Christ, we don't fear what comes across this world. We are well equipped for it. We know what's coming, and we know where our hope and our faith is. And when we do that, we can run our race. Just like Pastor John MacArthur, who we know today was translated onto glory. Um, he ran his race. He ran his race well, and he ran his race to the very end. I think he was, what, 80, 85, 86, something around that. And he was still preaching, and he was still teaching. And he ran his race because he knew his mission, and then he goes on to glory. This is the thing, is you don't become weary when you're mission focused. When you realize that God is before you, the old song, the Lord before you, the world behind you. That's what we've got to focus on. And we're not going to be brought into wearisome attitude as to what's happening, but we are going to be equipped for it. And I believe that when you start to see things get dark, when you start to see things get tumultuous, then those who are fed up with being in a consistent fear state will be reaching out for hope. And that hope is only Jesus Christ. And what I'm saying for that, this is a harvest field. I've said time and time again, for the last 5 years, when we have preached on the street, or when we have went and handed food out and helped people get into accommodation and are homeless and stuff, when we're in conversation with them, the continual phrase comes up. If I'm having a conversation with someone, I get asked, are these end times? Now, if the secular part of society already believe that, then that means the harvest is ready. So when you start to hear wars, rumors of wars, pestilence, disease, earthquakes, volcanoes, all of this stuff happening, the population is prepped and primed for you to run to the harvest field and tell him about Jesus. So without me going on and on, let's bring on Pete. Everybody say hi to Pete as he comes on. Let me just bring the comments down. Hold on. Can you hear me okay? I can't hear you. There's no sound. Hold on. Let me see if you're on mute. No, you're not. It must be your end. Well, it wouldn't be a broadcast if we didn't have technical issues. Um, so, yeah, there's no sound your end, Pete. Should I just do your voice? Should I just pretend you mouth it and I'll say it? It's like a lip reading. Okay, I still can't hear you. No, let me see. Oh,
There we go. You got me now?
there we go. Yeah, I can hear you now. That's it. I could have just done your voice. It'd be fine.
I changed my name already for you.
I just saw that. Say, he said, what are you, 15? Didn't you tell me 15%? Is that right? 15%
Oh,
Irish?
yeah,
So
something
what's
like
that?
that.
That's like your shin, up to your shin bone or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So we have loads to talk about. Now we could spend an awful lot of time talking about how Pete has went back in years in his look, and he looks younger, and he's going for that new sort of, it's a boy band look now. You know, he's slimmed down. But we'll talk about wars and rumors of wars and things like that. So just before you were coming on, I was talking about the recent rhetoric today from the Kremlin, or certainly the Russian state media, in terms of saying that with Donald Trump deciding to continue arming Ukraine, it is pushing the world closer to nuclear Armageddon. What do you think?
I honestly think that this is going to be, at least in terms of Russia, US, I think this is going to be, it's just brinkmanship right now. I think they're going to keep pushing each other. And Trump's mad because he's not getting his peace agreement in Ukraine. And neither of those guys are playing nice with each other. But I think that we're going to arrive at some kind of a precipice for peace, at least in the Middle East. That's
Mm-hmm.
not going to say that other skirmishes around the world aren't going to keep continuing to happen. They will, Africa and South America and other places. But I honestly think that all of this um, rhetoric and this in the saber rattling and these kind of strikes, they're using Ukraine as kind of like this fighting arena. This is where all the battles are taking place. So the place is getting demolished, and they're just using that to kind of show some brinksmanship. And I think we'll get up to a point, and then it'll seem like everything is calmed down, and then boom, I think that's the rapture, and then chaos breaks out, and now Russia has animus against the West. He has animus against Israel. Turkey has animus against the West and Israel. Iran clearly has animus against.
Mm-hmm.
They just put a $40 million bounty on his head, on Trump's head. So I mean, when the U.S. is at that point, and the U.S. is the kind of the foundation stone right now for the kind of Western civilization, as that begins to falter, that's where I think Gog and Magog, they take advantage of that chaos. But I think right now, just like we saw in years past, where North Korea is launching a bunch of missiles out to sea, it seems like we're going to get up to that point, and there's everybody, all the media is hyping it up and all that, and then it kind of lulls out. Cooler heads prevail. So I honestly think that we're not going to see any other kind of major conflict until after the rapture. So the rapture
Yeah.
will be that. Now, I think Israel will have to finish things up in their immediate area, and I think you could surmise that that is a form of Psalm 83. I don't know if it's the direct fulfillment, but it seems like it
Yeah.
rhymes with it, right? It's kind of
Yeah.
checking all those boxes, and I think that obviously sets the stage for Gog and Magog. So
What do you think of Peter Thiel's statement that he basically said? I showed the video there, but he basically said that to prepare for the Antichrist coming on the scene, it would be a case of keeping the way he would work. It would be to keep everybody in a perpetual state of fear. You know, having all these different headlines. And I don't know about you, but I'm seeing apocalypse, Armageddon, all those different things in the headlines continually now. Do you think that's a fair assumption that that is being used, that the media is being used to kind of lay the groundwork?
yeah, I mean, this is all, I mean, part and parcel of the Hegelian dialectic. You get people to a position where they are demanding change because things are so outrageous. Example, the riots in Spain, the riots in the UK, the ethnic tensions that are just boiling over in both places. That's by design. It's by design to break down national barriers so that people are more willing to just have this open society. But we're also, they're all the elite, the people that are pushing these agendas are seeing that that's not working out. But instead, there
Yeah,
is another way that they can use this crisis, and they're generating and creating this artificially created crisis by allowing mass migration from countries and places that will not assimilate into the receiving countries, and that is a recipe for disaster. And they know this. It's not like there are people that are immigrating. There's not a flood of people immigrating from Australia to Europe.
yeah,
Very similar cultures. You wouldn't have this kind of issue. you're bringing in people from polar opposites worldviews. Of course, they're not stupid. They know what's going to happen. And they're allowing this ethnic tension to continue to build and rise up so that they can take advantage on the backside of the crisis. They can clamp down, they can do all sorts of things. But again, I think Gog and Magog is going to solve Europe's Muslim problem. I think it's
Hmm.
going to drain Europe of all of these militant, angry, middle aged or military aged males out of Europe because they're going to march on Jerusalem. They're going to try and march and reclaim Jerusalem, and that's where they get wiped out. And that's going to leave that vacuum inside of Europe. But Europe now, even without the migrants, I mean, it's still, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there are what, 300 or 500 million people in
Yeah,
Europe?
yeah,
Is that, yeah. So it's still a massive country with high unemployment in terms of militarizing. And I think what we're seeing now is we're seeing the militarization of Europe. They've been laying dormant now for 70 something years because they've been resting under the shadow of the American might. They haven't needed to throw a bunch of money into NATO. They haven't needed to because the US was obviously going to be the is was the big kid on the block, right? The bully on the
yeah,
block. So now that that dynamic is changing and Europe is saying, "Hey, we cannot afford to go on any longer without our, without being on par with the United States or better in terms of military strength, to be a what do you call it? To make Russia not want to attack you. You're a what do you call that? I don't know. You're like the porcupine. Like nobody wants to get near you,
oh,
right? So that's who Europe wants to be. They want to be that tough and that
yeah.
untouchable, and they're recognizing now is the time. And so,
Well, Ursula von der Leyen has basically said that with the growth of the sort of deals being around the EDU, the European Defence Union, and basically a building of a standing army, that is their divorce from Washington. And so this kind of goes into what I think's happening. Is there a global shift happening geopolitically that we could see a different alignment in terms, like everybody looks for the Antichrist? I say before you look for the Antichrist, look for the 10 King system, because that's the bit that we're seeing formed, the in terms of a beast system. But one of the things that I was thinking about today, and then we'll go back onto something you said about the immigration issue, because we were talking about that earlier on the phone. Um, Today I was looking at Taiwan, and basically how since January of this year, China has managed to kind of take control in terms of Chinese supporting parliamentary members within their parliament. So the Taiwanese parliament is probably majority now Chinese supporting. So, do they need to take Taiwan physically, or can it be administratively, like they did with Hong Kong? Can it be, some type of judiciary takeover? And would that then provoke America to look elsewhere for minerals, such as Greenland, which would then fall into the Club of Rome ideal, of that we saw with the start of the Trump administration, looking to uh, he named Greenland, the Gulf of Mexico, Canada, but these are mineral rich areas. Do you think that that's a scenario that could happen, and that could be the catalyst, as in the takeover of Taiwan, whether administratively, militarily, judiciary wise? Could that be the catalyst that pushes a reshaping of the world?
yeah, I don't know. I think from China's perspective, I mean, just looking at it from the outside, it seems like it would be easy for China to take Taiwan, just
Yeah,
given the size, the proximity, but it's not. I mean, Taiwan is, for all intents and purposes, the sharpest porcupine in the middle in the Far East in terms of like their defenses. Their sole existence is predicated on a Chinese invasion, right? And so they have been arming themselves for decades, preparing themselves all manner of things. You think Gaza was bad with booby traps and all that? The Chinese haven't seen anything until they get to Taiwan. So their only option then is to come in with overwhelming force, destroying much of the infrastructure, just trying to take the island and possibly destroying why they would want to take it in the first place. Now, I mean, they want to take it because Taiwan as a political thorn in their side. But the thing that gives Taiwan
Yeah.
leverage is their ability to make these chips on a level that no other country can. And right now, since so much of the West in the world really relies on this kind of technology, it's not in anybody's best interest for this war to happen. And I don't think China is going to take Taiwan prior to the rapture. Now, I think what happens is, and the reason I tie everything to the rapture is, for me, that is the global game changer. That is what's going to be that redesigns the world order. Because once the U.S. is weakened or crippled or collapses, whatever happens, that in and of itself is going to, even if there were no rapture, even if the U.S. just collapsed, let's say something happened, Yellowstone volcano erupts and the U.S. is gone, right? But that is going to restructure the nature of the world, because now the U.S. had been dominating the planet for 70 something years, and now they're not in charge anymore. That leaves a giant vacuum that somebody has got to fill. And I think that what happens immediately after the rapture is that China, Taiwan, Japan, Korea, the Koreas, all of that they become more of a regional power. They
Hmm.
decide to band together, realizing that the US is no longer the great referee in the world. The US is out of the equation. Europe seems to be on the rise. There's still Russia, there's still the Middle East. I think that Asia is going to band together. And honestly, I don't know if anybody's. I've been out of the net for the last couple of weeks, so I don't really know where Xi Jinping is. But I had heard before I left to go out in the woods, literally, that nobody had seen him for a couple of weeks. So I have no idea where he is, and I know that he's up there in age, so he might suffer some kind of a coup. But if
Yeah.
another leader comes and replaces him, that is softer in terms of wanting to make China more open to the neighbors, I think they would be receptive to it, especially if the U.S. is no longer in the equation. They're going to want to buddy up with somebody that has real military strength. So I think all of those major regional alignments that we're kind of talking about, I think those come all on the backside. I think we're seeing the preparatory work now with
Hmm.
ASEAN, with what is it, the U.S. Canadian or U.S. UK Canada, Australia. It's some kind of an acronym. There's countries are aligning based on shared values, on economic treaties, and how we mutually benefit each other in terms of trade and things like
Hmm.
that. So right now, our alliances seem to be less ethnic, less even regional necessarily, but more aligned with shared values and economic reciprocity. So I think we're going to see that shift, and then after the rapture, it becomes more regional, it becomes more ethnic, and I think that's where you start to see that tribalism really kick in on a geopolitical scale.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I think where my thinking was is that how basically China, well, how China took back Hong Kong was in an administrative sense. They just basically, Britain stepped back, boom, you're ours again, and then the police force went in. And then if you're starting to see a parliamentary system turned in Taiwan in favor of China, I know that the leadership is not in favor, but the parliamentary system is starting to grow in favor of China, then that might start to sway things a little bit. But you
Mhm.
mentioned something, I know we were talking about it earlier, and I know that you're not really what I would call an environmentalist. I've seen you. So Pete will sometimes FaceTime me when he's in the office, and he showed me like this is the thing when you were supposed to be looking after your friend's plant, your co-worker's plant, um, he is feet away from it. So not only was he meant to be, not only were you capable of doing it, you actually watched it die. So I know you're not really an environmentalist, but we've been talking earlier about the environment and different things that are happening. Have you seen the reports about um, animals leaving Yellowstone? Now, I don't know the validity of this, but have you seen that?
I have, and I honestly didn't know. I mean, I only looked at the one source, so I like to look at a bunch of
Yeah.
different sources before I stamp my name on it. But I've seen a number of different reports about cougars leaving and about other kinds of animals, birds, cats, animals just kind of migrating away from Yellowstone. And I don't know if that's an annual thing that they do. I honestly I couldn't tell you, but when you see a bunch of animals leaving an area, that's usually a good sign that something bad is about to happen. So It can't be good. Now, another thing is Mount Rainier, which is in, I think it's in Washington, is it just had 300 had swarms, like earthquake swarms under Mount Rainier, which is a volcano.
Okay.
And so they don't even know the last time it erupted. I think it was over 1,000 years. So they think they're well overdue. But the last major swarms that they had that was in the hundreds was in 2009. So it seems like all of nature, and to include the increase in flooding. I mean, there's flooding in New York City,
Yeah.
there's flooding in the
That's
Midwest, there's flooding in Kentucky, there's
Spain.
flooding in Texas, New Mexico. We had wildfires like crazy this year in California, and we're not, that was in January. I mean, who knows what's going to happen this summer in
Hmm.
the dry parts of the country. Then you have the earthquake, the tectonic plates are starting to rumble in places that they haven't been historically
Yeah.
along the New Madrid, just random places. It's like, wow, I didn't even know there's a fault there, and we had an earthquake. Even though it was small, but you
Well,
can
I
tell
told
the
you
earth is,
there was one in
yeah,
Italy when we were there. Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, carry on.
So it just seems like it's not just one thing. It's not like it's just hurricanes getting worse. It's hurricanes, it's earthquakes, it's tornadoes, it's the salinity in the sea down by where we were talking about earlier in the Antarctic, which
Hmm.
is fueling or giving fuel for these stronger weather phenomena that we see in the La Nina and El Nino patterns that form in the earth, in the equator, and that pushes the weather and the jet streams, from the Pacific and all that, and how that impacts the U.S. And so we're in for a very, I think it's going to continue to be tumultuous, and the weather is going to continue to deteriorate as we go forward, unfortunately. And when we came to see you guys, you had this massive like windstorm, and there was
Yeah.
trees blowing over, and like I expect to see that in Oklahoma. I don't expect to see that in
Yeah.
Ireland of all places. I just expect it to be always kind of like the Shire. This is like that's the way it's always supposed to be. I didn't know that you
You
guys would get storms and stuff like that.
you saying we're all hobbits? Is that what you're saying?
At heart, maybe at heart, but not
Yeah.
not in height.
Well, what? Well, yeah, I'm not far off it. What about Japan? We were talking about Japan on the phone earlier, and it was like they've predicted this, and I know that like the scientists have predicted that they're overdue this mega quake. So obviously, you go back to 2011. You remember there was I think was it 9 on the Richter scale. There was this
Yeah,
massive earthquake that caused a tsunami. They're predicting an even bigger one, and they've already done, even with like Japan's very advanced in terms of structures and how the structures are in place to deal with those tremors. But they've predicted a casualty number of around 300,000. But even what would come off the back of that, it could reshape territories around. It would certainly, take. We've looked at the Japanese economy and how it's been tanking. It would reshape economies. It would reshape a major event like that. Could reshape the world to a certain degree with how we know it. And I don't know if you saw with this. They were predicting it. I think the 5th of July, was it the 5th of July? It was something like that. They were predicting that this would happen. Now, this got me. I wrote about this a little bit on Facebook because I saw that this prediction of this major quake, even though scientists are saying that it's coming, there was a manga artist who had predicted this. And as he had predicted this, um, the government had taken his prediction and started to evacuate islands. Now, what struck me is that is a prediction by let's call it what it is, a comic book drawer, artist. Bible, which is 100% accurate on prophecy. And they don't, if imagine what the world would be like if everybody listened to what the Bible was saying and what the predictions were and followed the predictions out in terms of, right, I need to repent, just like, you know, there's a flood coming in the time of Noah, or there's a fire judgment coming. Do you think, with all of this happening, with wars, but also weather activities, different things like that, do you think we're going to see a turn to God. I'm not talking in terms of geopolitically. I'm talking in terms of individuals.
I honestly I don't. I do think so. It's kind of yes and no. On one side of it, I think that Watchmen communities around the world are ramping up their prayer lives. I think there are pockets of believers that are recognizing the signs of the times and they are going full bore in and like, hey, we need to get serious. And I think we've seen that. I mean, a lot of people here tonight would be say, yeah, we woke up in 2020, COVID like shook us out of our, lethargic slumber that we were in, for decades. And I've heard that from a lot of people. So I
Hmm.
think as things continue to ramp up and get worse and worse, I think more and more people in primarily, well, believers and unbelievers are going to be like, this doesn't feel normal anymore. This feels like the last days. It feel all the things that they've been mocking. So I do think there's going to be more people getting serious about their faith, and that would include people coming to the faith. I don't think that that number is going to be like revival numbers or like what we
No.
saw in Kentucky couple years
Yeah.
ago with that university. It's not going to be things like that. I think it'll be like, and we probably won't even know about it. I mean, obviously, it's not going to make the news or anything, but small pockets of believers becoming more sincere, more fervent in their prayer life and in their walk with the Lord, I think will avail much within their surrounding communities, and then so families and neighbors and stuff I think will feel that impact of that increased fervor that watchmen have. I
Hmm.
don't think that that's going to transcend across Christendom though, because most of Christendom is asleep at the wheel under
Yeah.
the warm, soft, lullaby tunes of amillennialism and postmillennialism and all those things that keep people nice and sleepy and not watching and waiting for the Lord to come back. So I don't think there's going to be any kind of revival in the West. Now, uh, in Japan, in the East, in China, and other places, I think that it's like wildfire right now in many communities around the world. We have very little knowledge of that because the media doesn't cover that kind of thing. It's also dangerous to cover it for them because you don't want to expose people that are converting to Christianity in a predominantly Muslim country or communist country or whatever. So a lot of that growth that we're going to see, those numbers that are coming from all over the world, I don't think we're going to know this side of the rapture, but we're going to see it on the other side. And they're going to be people that came, just like remember the parable where Christ was talking about some people got paid that worked all day. They started work in the
Yeah.
morning, and then some people started in the middle of the day. Some people, and I think these are those folks that are coming in at the very tail end. And I think we should rejoice in them coming, even though we've been at this a lot longer than we should just be rejoiceful that that Lord is able to reach them in these places
Yeah.
that missions have closed down. We can't get in there anymore. Internet's censored. Everything seems to be shut off, but God still finds a way to reach in there, dreams, visions, and whatever else. I mean, nobody can stop that. So I do think that there is going to be more believers made in this time. I don't think it's going to be like this, big, Billy Graham crusades or anything like that. It's not going to be like that. I think people are going to largely, it's going to be like the days of Noah, the days a lot. People are going to be very caught up in buying and selling and marrying and giving in marriage and planting and sowing and you know, this because most people think the world's just going to keep going on and on and on. They
Yeah.
don't see how close we are to the edge.
I find that absolutely disheartening that the church are continually the amount of Christians I was talking about this on Sunday, and then I had conversations after church with people, and they were telling me about family members and friends who are all of this attitude that if you're talking dispensationalism, if you're talking eschatology, if you're talking end times or anything like that, they don't want to hear it, but they still profess to be Christian. And it's not saying that you have to be, everybody's got to be a watchman in that sense that they're studying and they're warning everybody. But at the same time, I think that you have to be aware of the season. You know, Ecclesiastes 3, there's a season for everything. And we have to be aware of the season that we're in. If you're not aware of the season that you're in, then how do you know what way to walk? How do you know what way to stand? Like we have got certain legislation being brought in the UK. We've got a thing called respect orders. Now, I don't know if you've heard of these.
Mm.
So respect orders are kind of like taking an antisocial behavior order, or as we call them, an ASBO, right? And adding on a different level to them. So if you were out there, and if somebody was spraying or whatever, like graffitiing in the street, that would be an antisocial behavior order, and they would be prosecuted off the back of that. A respect order is kind of jumping on the back of that, but it's under the term of offense. So if I'm on the street and I cause offense to someone, I can then be prosecuted under a respect order. Now, if you read through the terms of what it classifies as causing offense, too loud is one, right? Which is me. I'm out, right?
Mm.
Too opinionated, which is another. So this is actual coming in as legislation under the Labour government. So if you're too loud, too opinionated in public, you can be prosecuted under a respect order, right? And if you're standing in public sharing opinions that go against the public or go against those in front of you, again, you can face prosecution on this. So I don't know about you, but I think that if historically speaking, so not so much, I'm not using the Bible for this and talking about history in this. Historically speaking, when we've seen the church put in those sort of scenarios, you've seen two churches develop. You've seen a state church that will go along with the crowd on everything, like you said, through COVID. And then you've seen those who go, no, stuff you, God's laws are above man's laws.
Mm.
Not Romans 13, but Hosea 8:14, where I say that God did not give us those to lead us. Those leaders are not from God. So do you see that? I guess what I'm trying to say, not so much a revival, because I don't believe there'll be a revival. I believe like certain individuals, like you said, in 2020 started to become awake to things. Do you think what we're going to see with this continued persecution, whether legislation, wars, and all of this call for conscription and all that, do you think we're going to see the two churches become more prominent? One that is a state capitulating sort of sponsored church, and then another that is, well, the remnant church.
Yeah, no, I do see that for sure. And when you read the letter to Philadelphia, it says they have little strength, and I think that we will see, just like we saw during 2020, we saw a lot of churches that bent the knee to the government, and we saw
Yeah.
churches that did not bend the knee to the government. But what we did see was that we saw the total number of church doors closing for good. And if you look at a guy like Jack Hibbs, Pastor Hibbs, his church grew, John MacArthur's grew. Churches that didn't close down became bigger because more people saw them as taking a stand and they wanted to be associated with that. And that was one way for them to vote their discontent with the state government or the federal government or whoever. And the reason those churches are growing, not because more and more outsiders are coming in, although they did bring in some outsiders, folks that weren't believers, but they're people are don't have their church anymore. They have to go somewhere, so
Yeah.
they start going and migrating to these Jack Hibbs type church, but they
Mhm.
also migrate to these other mega churches, like the Joel Osteen type churches, and there's a bunch of them all over the U.S. and probably the world. But I do see that. I see a church that is towing the state government line. And it seems like even under this administration that we have, it's very much ecumenical. He doesn't care. They don't care if you're, Jewish or Catholic or Hindu or Muslim or Satanist or whatever. They want everybody to be under this big MAGA tent, and so they keep making the tent bigger and bigger and bigger to accommodate everybody. But eventually, those clashes are going to start to become evident. So I think Trump is trying to build this massive coalition, or he has built this massive coalition. And I think that same spirit of compromising, everybody coming together, let's set our differences aside, let's get along, let's go achieve said goal, whatever the goal is. And I think a lot of churches are going to get on board with that, and they're going to begin to, and they already have. I mean, they're watered down their message, watered down their position on things.
Mhm.
Chip and Joanna Gaines, who has very successful, they had a Christian TV ministry, doing the houses, home renovation show, and now they're pro LGBT, whatever, the Alphabet Mafia,
Yeah.
and I think that's exactly the direction that most churches are going to go today. as the pressure starts to come down harder and harder on churches to bend the knee to accept whatever lifestyle or accept whatever. I don't think that's ever going to change. Like the Satan's focus is always going to be on getting the church to compromise. Always. It doesn't matter who's in charge. He's always going to focus on getting the church to compromise. Or, like he did in the 50s, the 40s and 50s, he had everybody so fractionalized that nobody could get along because you had this kind of Baptist and that kind of Baptist, and this Baptist was going to hell, and this kind of Baptist heaven was only for this kind of Baptist, and the Church of Christ here, and we did this to ourselves, and we became weak because we divided. I think the reverse of that is going to be the state kind of church uniting together and showing their power, strength, and unanimity. Um, and what's going to be left is those folks who aren't part of that, and that's going to be the remnant church who gets weaker and more marginalized and more discredited, and yeah, on and on and on.
Well, let me ask you this: do you think, like I was thinking back to February of this year, um, the the Temple Institute and certainly the Sanhedrin wrote Trump an open letter, and it was kind of, you know, on one hand celebrating the faith department that he put in,
Mm,
which to be honest, I'm not a big fan of. I think of it in terms of what we see in the UK. You have the Church of England tied heavily to the state, and the Church of England, in my opinion, is probably the most pacified, sort of compromised sort of system that you see. And so far from biblical Christianity, and I know I'll be hated for this, but that's what I say. But then they in that letter they started to then talk about the Noahide laws. And do you think that that could be something that it starts to, in terms of a state-sponsored church, in terms of a state capitulating church, that's something that unites them? That okay, these laws, these Noahide laws that unite the monotheistic faiths, right? Because they can all agree on those. That could be something that then takes us further towards the likes of the harlot system.
mhm. Yeah, yeah, and also I think that the hindrance right now is we have the Abraham House in was it Abu Dhabi or Dubai or one of those island nations,
Abu Dhabi.
uh, and they have the three titular heads of the faiths, right? The representative from Islam, the representative from
Yeah,
Judaism, and from Christianity. Although they don't speak for none of those speak for those religions. They're just
yeah,
figureheads, right? I do think that that is going to gain momentum, especially after Gog and Magog, because once the all of the might of Islam, which is its young angry men, once all that's gone, wiped out, what's left of Islam, it's going to have neutered it and basically taken the vitriol and anger and fighting out of it, and it's that system is just going to be rolled up under all the other systems, like Christianity, what's the post rapture Christian whatever Christian and name only kind of system.
yeah,
And then the same thing with Hinduism and Buddhism and Zoroastrianism and Shintoism and Jainism and all the other isms. That's just going to be another system rolled up in there. And I think that that's part and parcel. It has to be removed from Islam in order for it to be rolled up into this final harlot religion that is going to be forced upon the world. They can't have this holdout Muslims who are, they will, and that will be part, I think, of the Red Horse riding and
yeah.
cleansing out all the holdouts, people that are fighting against the system. It's going to be why that's where that riding of that red horse is going to be on every continent, because there's going to be people that don't want to be rolled up in the system.
Hmm.
Let's just say you have people like the Amish, not the Amish necessarily, but people that have already been segregated from society before all this, don't want anything to do with this, and now they're being forced into this system,
Yeah,
and they're gonna put up a fight. I mean, so that's where I think the red horse, the peace, is taken from the earth, because that is where everybody is brought into the system, whether you like it or not, kicking and screaming. People, and that's where that global conflict on a scale the world hasn't seen. That will be, to me, that's going to be World War III, because that's going to take place in every country, in every neighborhood, in every place where people are fighting against not being brought into the system, which
yeah,
kind of aligns with Daniel's. the vision that was given to him of the animals, his teeth with ferocious beasts that just tramples everything. When the Romans went in, and, the Romans had a massive empire from North Africa in the south to, the borders of Parthia in the east, and then all the way up into, what is it, Scotland, or almost to Scotland in the north.
Hmm.
And, they went into a place and they militarily pacified it. And then they basically set up a provincial government, hired locals, made sure that the people can keep their own religions, they can keep their own whatever. They just had to bend the knee to Caesar, and they had to do what Caesar asked them to do, or else face that trampling. And I think that now that trampling is on a scale that think of Ukraine everywhere. Like, you're not going to be able to hide. Those guys that are fighting there, and I know a lot of folks aren't a fan of General Milley. I wasn't either, but when I knew him long ago, this was 2009 or 2008 timeframe. He's a one star, and I mean, he would sit right next to me, and we'd watch these, operations going down. It was in the middle of the night in Afghanistan, and I was working the night battle captain there, and so we had the only aviation brigade in the country in theater. So he'd come sit next to me, and we'd watch this, and he was a very, very intelligent, incredibly intelligent guy. And
Hmm.
he said in 2016 that, this is 2016, he was saying this. He was like, there's going to come a day when we're not going to be fighting like Iraq or Afghanistan, where we go in and we set up a base. And from the base, we launch our operations. He goes, you're not going to be able to set up anywhere because artillery, drones, all that, you won't be able to, you're constantly going to be on the move.
Yeah.
And somewhere between then and his time in DC, he became very corrupted and was became basically a shill of the deep state. So he lost all of his credibility to me in that aspect. But he was right earlier on
Hmm.
that the nature of warfare is going to become incredibly. It is not going to be anything like we've seen before, and I don't think people really understand the level of violence that's about to be thrust upon the world once the red horse begins his ride.
Well, before you came on, I was talking about I'm sort of kind of postulating a theory that we could already be in World War III, but World War III does not look like World War II or World War One, which also look different to each other. That it could be this proxy war, because that's kind of what we're seeing. I'm not saying that is for certain, but I think it's certainly something that we're seeing with the dividing alliance, with countries using other countries, with Ukraine being a thing in which basically you could turn around and say, well, the American administration will versus the Russian administration will is being played out on the Ukrainian battlefield. But that then, to me, sort of, because the way I look at that, that kind of fits with prophecy. When I look, you talk about the red horse. The same horsemen are mentioned in Zechariah 6, but in Zechariah 6 they are shackled to chariots, so they're kind of, they're not loosened. And my that's the way I see it prophetically, right? I would say that
Mhm.
Revelation 6 follows Revelation 5. Jesus opens the seal, and boom, those horses, those spirits are now released. Zechariah 6, the word I think in Hebrew is hedekel, which means to patrol. They're going to and fro throughout the land. That's why we've always seen wars. We've seen massive times of wars. We've seen massive times of lack and famine. You know, that's them going to and fro. But like you say, it won't be anything like we've seen until the
Yeah.
rapture's happened and those seals are opened in the tribulation. So would you say that that could be, I guess we're both pre-trib. We're not going to see the riding those four horsemen coming out. We will see from heaven, but we're not going to sort of take part in this in the world. But do you think that we're going to see an increase in all of those things right up until the trumpet is blown?
Yeah, and it's kind of like, um, somebody had asked me, what, like, if we can't know when the rapture is, how can I know that we're near? And it's, we see the architecture and we see the architecture for the infrastructure of the beast kingdom being laid right now in terms of what all is happening in terms of technology, geopolitics, economics, etc. And here's kind of an aside, but look at a guy like Elon Musk, and I have to give credit to a friend Reza for pointing this out to me. He goes, look at all the things that he's involved in, and this is kind of mind blowing. And I never thought about it this way. But he said, what kind of companies does Musk own? So he has Tesla, which has this crazy looking car that everybody either loves it or hates it. He has a boring. It's called the Boring Company, which is a tunneling company. They tunnel underground and do whatever. He has a robotics company that builds these AI driven robots. He has an AI Grok, which is an AI platform that he's working through. Twitter, X, whatever, social media. He's got Starlink. He's got Neuralink. What do all these things have in common? They have one thing in common, that's or in SpaceX, the rockets and the that.
Yeah, yeah.
So what do these things have all in common?
Well, world domination, really.
Not this world.
Yeah, true. Yeah,
Mar-
yeah.
it's for Mars. Everything
That's
he's doing right now is for Mars.
yeah.
Even the Tesla. Think about why it's shaped that way. It's not designed for our atmosphere. It's designed for, and what his goal is to, and I'm going to get back to your question, but the reason I'm saying all this is because I'm going to make an illustration. He needs the rockets to be able to launch the technology to Mars. He needs the
Uh-huh.
robots to go there and to be programmed with enough intelligence to begin building the bases and things that he needs on Mars. He needs the Starlink in order to shoot those communications and instructions back and forth to Mars or to the backside of the moon if they establish something on the moon, like a relay station that connects to Mars. He needs the Neuralink in order to be able to, guide these things, kind of like almost remote viewing, controlling these things on another planet. And I just saw that, I don't know if it was the James Webb or there was oh no, it was the Voyager satellite that's like 15 million miles away from Earth that had a frozen engine, and they were able to remotely start that engine and get it going again.
Uh-huh.
So that's way further than what Mars is. So he's everything he is doing, the tunneling, he needs the tunneling equipment to be able to tunnel underground to make subterranean living places there in Mars. Everything he's doing is tied with colonizing Mars, right? But if most people didn't know that because they're simply looking at one or two things. They're just looking at Twitter, or they're, oh yeah, I forgot he owns that. We're not really paying attention to all the pieces that he's putting together. But if you look at everything he's doing, there's a method to his madness, and that madness is to get off planet, and that's why he's doing what he's doing. Now, having said that, you all now see what I see, and I see what my friend Reza saw. And that to me is where we're starting to see the beast kingdom coming into play. If you look at each one individual thing, it's hard to really make sense of it. And yeah, you can argue, that doesn't really mean anything. But when you take everything in collectively, the push for global currency, a digital currency, the push for a global religion, the push for a global government, those are the three overarching things that we see in Revelation 13. Just look for things to move in that general direction. Don't get caught up in all the distractions of this little thing here or that little thing there. Look at big muscle movements, and they're all moving in the same direction. They're all moving toward the world that we see in Revelation 13. So I definitely see this stuff being built now. We're
Hmm.
seeing it being built. Again, it's hard for us to see the forest for the trees when we're deep inside the forest. We don't know where we are, but if you just step out or get above the forest and get to a vantage point, you can see what's before you. And I think what we're seeing is now we have the eyes to see and the ears to hear and the Holy Spirit discernment to show us this is important. This is this thing over here that nobody is paying attention to. This is like leading to something else. And that's why it's so frustrating for us because we see it so clearly, but our friends, our neighbors, our relatives, our spouses, they don't see it, and we
Yeah.
can't get them to see it because it takes the Holy Spirit to open their eyes, to take those scales off their eyes and show them how, just like the Holy Spirit did in 2020 for a lot of people. I
Hmm.
think the things that we're starting to see should be those evangelistic tools that we're able to show people and say, look, if the world was going to go on another 1,000 years, like you think it is, blah blah blah, and you can logic through that and say, well, why are we doing this, or how is this technology not going to destroy us, even if the Lord doesn't come back? I mean, there's just no way we haven't invented a technology yet we haven't used on each other. And we're
Mhm.
doing things now. We're like opening portals to other dimensions, and who knows? We can bend time. We can teleport small bits of things. It's just going to be a matter of time before we can start teleporting. And I don't mean like Star Trek where I disintegrate and then
Yeah,
I
yeah.
reintegrate over here. It's going to be like a slip, creating a slip through our reality from one place to another place. And somehow we're able to do that with small bits of light and electrons and things now. But it's just a matter once we know it can be done. That's the thing. So now that we know that it can be done, it's just fine tuning it so that we can move people and equipment through those slips. And that's going to revolutionize, especially when you think about in the times of the seal judgments when the oceans are turning to blood and the rivers are turning to blood and half the world's burning. So this kind of technology, I think, is going to be critical for the Antichrist to control everywhere on the planet,
Mhm.
because a lot of those normal, the sky being choked with smoke and ash and whatever, and the oceans being turned to blood, you're not going to be able to drive a submarine through that or a ship or anything else. You're going
Yeah.
to have a way to be able to get from point A to point B very quickly. I think this limited a bit of time that we have left in the world, we're going to start to see that technology begin to advance faster.
When you say that, like people can't see, I think it goes a little bit further. People can't see. So, like if you use 2020 as the example, people couldn't see what was in front of their face. They're, which because I'm talking about the church primarily because they're putting their head in the sand, and if you're not looking at what's right there in front of your face, you cannot then see the agenda behind it. And I think you're not just to see what is happening, but you're to see the agenda behind it. Like when you phoned earlier and you were walking, outside of your work, outside of your office, and you actually brought up the analogy that if there wasn't a path through this, and if I would have to be looking for signs like moss on one side of the tree to just to find my direction, find my way. Are we too far gone? Not talking in general, like not people on here, but is the world too far gone to actually have that spark where they go, oh, hold on a minute. There's a world elite that have nefarious plans that seem to be in line with the Luciferian agenda, whether they are knowingly or submissively or just passively in line with that. There seems to be an agenda that is going against both logic and, I guess, democracy across the world right now, and it seems to be lining up with Scripture. Do you think that there's going to be, like I said, not in terms of the question I asked you before, about revival or anything like that. I mean, within the church, do you think people are going to start to see? They're going to start looking at the signs, or do you think that's just going to be a thing of when it's too late, then people start waking up to the signs?
Man, I don't know. I've met I shared the story before, but when I was in the army and I would come home to Decatur on holidays, I would go with my father-in-law and my his friend that he was in one of the one that wasn't an elder but like a deacon in the church there,
Mhm.
and we would take communion and we'd take it to the shut-ins, the people that were stuck in nursing homes. They couldn't get out because they can't drive or they don't have any way to get to church or anything, or they can't physically. So we'd take them communion and we'd go sing hymns with them. And then we'd always grab some coffee or like a taco or something after that and wait for the service to start because we'd have to go to a couple of different nursing homes, but we'd usually be done before church started. And I used to talk about the mark of the beast and how money was going to go digital and everybody's going to have to be forced into the system. And this guy that's my father-in-law's friend, he is a financial planner. He owns his own wealth management company, and so that's all he does. He's done that for decades. And I went and saw him. It was like last year. It was before I went on my deployments, but I was kind of. I think it was in between my deployments, and I went into a shop and I just was talking with him for a little bit. And at the end, we were talking for like an hour. He kind of leans over and puts his hand on my shoulder and he's like, Pete, and this guy's a very serious guy. Like he deals with money, people's financial planning, their whole estates, all that kind of stuff. Like he's a very serious minded guy, very nice guy. But he put his hand on my shoulder and he's like, Pete, I just want you to, and this came out of nowhere. Like we weren't even talking about this. We were just like catching up on family and stuff. he puts his hand on my shoulder. He's like, Pete, I just want you to know, I used to think you were insane. He goes, I don't think you're crazy anymore. He goes, look, he's like, all this stuff going around, that stuff you used to talk about, Revelation 13. He goes, I think I'm starting to see it. And so I know that there are individuals within the church that are waking up.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to be this big, it's not going to be like when Left Behind came out, and everybody was talking about, it's not going to be like that kind of hype.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that would wake the church up, and I would say like the traditional Orthodox, pretty sound churches that probably don't teach on prophecy or whatever. I think the only thing that would really wake people up is if the Al Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock are destroyed somehow and the foundation stone is laid for the third temple. I think that would wake people up very, very quickly. Not everybody. There's still going to be your hard-headed preterist out there and hard-headed A-mills and post-mills and folks saying like, oh, that's nothing. That was all done in the first century and blah, blah, blah. I think that there'll be those people, but I think there's going to be a lot of Christians would wake up. So I don't know. I don't know. I always thought the Dome of the Rock would get destroyed in Gog and Magog, but if it's destroyed somehow and the Jews are somehow lay a foundation stone up there or something, I think that could be a big moment. But even still, look at. I mean, they think they pretty much or 99% sure they found Noah's Ark,
Yeah.
in Mount
Yeah.
Ararat, that one place. And nobody in the church is all excited about it or talking about it, or and I'm talking about most churches, right, that you go to.
Yeah.
Uh, they don't care. I mean, it's like it's not even registering. So the fact that we found one of the greatest historical pieces of evidence of biblical reality and history and art and everything in the world, in world's history, and the church hasn't even like, they're like,
Well,
it's I don't know.
it dumbfounds me because I can have conversation. I like when we go out in the street and we talk. Quite often, you'll come up against. I don't mean it that way. You'll come across someone who is maybe a staunch atheist, or maybe they're like I was talking to a fella recently, and he was studying physics at university. Lovely, lovely fella, and we ended up really deep conversation. But things like Noah's Ark and stuff, I brought up. So I brought them up because his standpoint was is like he believes in science, he believes in this, and I went, yeah, yeah, so do I. And he goes, well, I believe in the Big Bang Theory. I says, that's great because the Big Bang Theory is basically a Genesis account. It's a Genesis account of what Genesis says, but what man's deciphering is that at the beginning there was nothing. It was a singularity. There was nothing to cause creation. Something happened, a catalyst that brought creation into being. And the only thing that we know that that is contained within Genesis 1, that God spoke. And there was like, that there was that catalyst into creation. So we were able to actually connect on this. And this is what I don't understand. If the church has this, and we do have, and it's probably not the right terminology, we do have this ammunition where we have got both archaeological and historical discoveries that corroborate what the Bible says. And we have got also, prophecies that are 100% accurate. And we're starting to see not just converge, but major fulfillments. This is ammunition to reach the lost. So I don't understand why the church itself is not like not up in arms, but kind of invigorated by all of these discoveries. Like I don't know, did you see that Ben Gavir and others within the Knesset, they basically that there's been this status quo law for years that Jews cannot pray on the Temple Mount, and they kind of just says no. That's it. There will be no enforcement of this, no police enforcement of this. I think this was the end of June, and they went up in the Temple Mount and they all prayed. Like,
Mhm.
surely that's a moment that we're getting close to the third temple.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was I saw that. That was very powerful. And again, the church is asleep at the wheel. Like they just most you could go to any wherever you live. Not well, probably there too, but like you could go to any church on any given Sunday and just go visit a sampling of churches or listen to their sermons, even after a major event in Israel happens, like striking Iran or whatever.
Yeah.
I would say probably only about 20% of churches are even mentioning that or teaching on it or why it's significant. they might mention it like, let's keep those people in prayer, and then they go on to whatever they're
Yeah.
talking about. And I'm like, it just blows my mind how tone deaf like 90% of the pulpits are these days. And
Yeah. Me
I
too.
know I'm not a pastor. I'm casting judgment on a lot of pastors because they are not teaching a particular thing. But if I can charge anything against them, it's that they're tone deaf. They are not keeping up with what's happening prophetically, biblically, and the most exciting time for the believer in the history of mankind, aside from Christ's first coming, is now. And the church is just like, whatever, we're just going to keep doing our programs, and let's just keep our regularly scheduled events going on, and a sermon through Ecclesiastes, and next week we'll go into what. And I'm not knocking Ecclesiastes. I'm just saying
Yeah.
they are
Yeah.
not they're not
It's
affected one way or the other. Prophetic things happening, and that's a spiritual sign of deadness, like a spiritual deadness when you're not moved by something, like if you see an incredibly emotional event happen, a dog getting rescued, a puppy, or like things that make you kind of like choke up. That kid, listening to that kid's
the
in the
Jesus
hospital
Springs.
room.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I was bawling my eyes out. Like I don't know how you
Yeah.
can listen to something and not be
Yeah.
impacted, but it seems like most of the church leadership these days are just like, whatever, that doesn't have anything to do with my little church here in USA town, town USA, and my little program. And they're like little islands unto themselves, completely oblivious to what's happening outside. And I don't know, man. It took something like COVID where it impacted
Yeah.
everybody to
Yeah.
impact everybody, you know? And we saw very quickly who lined up with the government and who's like, "Wait a minute, this doesn't smell right." And that is pretty obvious. So I think the same amount of groups that lined up with, yeah, we'll shut down, we'll keep 6 feet apart, we'll only have a church with 3 people in it, and well, whatever. Uh,
Yeah.
we saw very quickly which churches went that direction and which were like, "Yeah, we're not shutting down. This is not constitutional. You don't have the
Well,
authority." Blah blah. So I think we'll see that.
I've told people this before that we had it was actually other Christians who would call the police on us in church. So the police would turn up, and then it was, like there was a couple of times in which some of the things that they had reported, I'd said, "Oh, right, I know who said that. That's a so-called Christian believer." And you know, on one occasion, one of the police actually affirmed what my suspicion was, and that kind of says it all. The way I look at this, right? I say that the churches that won't talk about the now word of God, and that's what I remember talking to Pastor Brandon about this, Pastor Brandon Holthouse, and he calls it the now word of God. That is, it's now relevant. It's always been relevant, but you're actually seeing things play out, and you have to have your eyes awake to this. I say it that their tails aren't wagging, and what I mean by that is that whenever I drive up and I park my car, our dog will be at the front window, and or her tail will be just going back and forward so much that she can't even stay. She'll stand on the windowsill, but she'll be kind of falling off it because she's so excited to see me coming into the house. And that's how every Christian should be right now. That
Yeah.
not that we're going, "Oh, isn't that great that there's this war," or "Isn't that great that this has happened?" No, 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 no. We're not daft like that. I am not excited about a third temple or at all or anything like that. But I am excited because this is a proximity alert to the return of my Lord and Savior. And so my tail is wagging. And I'm going
Yeah.
to go, I'm excited to run into his arms, to actually go, "Hold on a minute. This world is decaying. It's going to hell in a handbasket. And therefore I need to be with my Lord and Savior. And I need to get as many people into that basket as possible. I need to get as many people to him as possible. Preach the gospel at all times. Share my faith." And yeah, so I see it as a wagon tail. How excited are you? And I think that
Yeah.
you put a post up on Facebook um, about prosperity, and it was about I can't remember what the actual thing was. It was about basically when you become in love with prosperity, then it's more about the world being in you. I'm just kind of paraphrasing it. You probably have it there, but it's kind of that instinct that you're seeing a lot of churches that are more concerned, I think, with their place in this world, their setting in the community. And listen, it's not saying that they don't love Jesus. They've just got their focus off, and compared to actually, just being hungry for his return and hungry for being about his kingdom business.
Mm.
Did I get that prosperity thing right?
It says prosperity knits a man to the world. He feels that he is finding his place in it, while really it is well, excuse me, finding his place in it, while really it is finding its place in him. And that's from C.S. Lewis, the Screw Tape Letters.
Yeah.
But let me read this to you real quick. If are you done, or do you want me to?
No, no, go for
Okay,
it. Go for it.
listen to this. This is from Jesus himself. Let your waist be girded and your lamps burning, and you yourselves be like men who wait for their master when he will return from the wedding. When he comes and knocks, they may open to him immediately. Blessed are those servants whom the master, when he comes, will find watching. Assuredly, I say to you that he will gird himself and have them sit down to eat, and will come and serve them. The Lord will come and serve them, those people that are watching and waiting for him, and anticipating his return. And if he should come in the second watch, or come in the third watch, and find them so, blessed are those servants. But know this, that if the master of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched and not allowed his house to be broken into. Therefore, you also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you do not expect. And I said, and down here, if we skip it down a little bit, it says, verse 43, blessed is that servant in whom his master will find so doing, talking about
Mhm.
watching him for him. That's from Luke 12,
Yeah.
starting in verse 30, 35. But that's the Lord saying that. Like,
Hmm.
he gave us a command in Mark 13:37 to watch. He said that to everybody. He says, everybody, this isn't a suggestion. It's not
Yeah.
something that he's encouraging. He's saying, hey, watch. This is a command from the creator of the universe. He's telling us to watch. And when people don't watch, I think that's an affront
Hmm.
to it's like when coming home, after a long trip, and everybody's like, whatever, you're back.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no excitement, there's no anything. It's kind of like that feeling. And so I can imagine that is, not only is it hurtful, but it's very disrespectful.
Hmm. Yeah. No, 100%. I'd agree with that. I kind of I look at that, and I that's what I mean by a wagging tail. See, whenever the 12-day war happened there, I was. It sounds wrong because it sounds like you're excited for a war. I wasn't. I came in and I said, we've been talking all year. I think Jeremiah 49 is going to be sometime this year, and I've been sort of leading up to it. And I it sounds really bad because I know it's a war, but I skipped into church on the Sunday and going, look at what's just happened. Verse 35. Now,
Mm.
verse 36 is still to be fulfilled, but verse 35, because it's the cassette, the bow, the firing mechanism that God destroys. Then verse 36 to verse 38, there's more fulfillment to happen. But I said, this is something in which you can then go, look, you don't believe in Jesus? Let me tell you about the truth of prophecy. Let me tell you what's being fulfilled right now as we speak. Let me tell you and let me show you and point you to scripture. You're looking at the wars and rumors of wars and you're consumed with fear. Let me show you the hope that is found in Jesus. And I think that's the whole premise of why we watch. We don't watch to go, oh, here's another thing to be frightened of. We watch because we know the hope and the counter to the disease that the enemy's trying to put out there. We know the truth of it. Um, yeah, sorry. Are you okay for taking some questions?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, so I did bring my glasses up. Now,
Somebody
this.
wanted us to do a 5-hour Bible prophecy-a-thon.
Yeah, hold on a
I
minute.
said, I'm good. I'm good. It's 5 o'clock here. I know it's like, well,
It's quarter to
midnight there.
11
So
here. Yeah. This is already late for me, just so you know. um,
he's
so,
accommodating me. He's accommodating me.
well, you see, that's it. I'm just that nice. That's all it is. Hammer Time has said, do you think Russia will unleash nukes with the US and NATO ramping up?
I don't. I don't. I don't. Well, I take that back. I don't see them using a nuke in the sense of against like the UK or some NATO member. They might use it in Ukraine and just
Hmm.
say, "Hey, you want this place? I'm going to turn the whole place into Chernobyl,"
Yeah.
and nobody gets it. Nobody gets it. So I could see that for sure. But and that may qualm everybody like, whoa, things
Hmm.
went just too far right there. So then everybody might pull back at that point. But I could, yeah, that's definitely a possibility. But I think it would be in some place like Ukraine or in the ocean somewhere that Russia's saying, hey, we're not afraid to use this like a demonstration. But I don't think it'll be against like the UK or the
Yeah.
US or anything like that.
I seen a CIA, an ex-CIA analyst say that he's put his sort of measurement on this at a 30% chance that there will be some sort of nuclear event, whether it's like a dirty bomb, whether it's a suitcase nuke, but he believes it'll be done in a way of proxies. So it'll not be done openly, as in Russia, like you say, coming against a NATO country, but maybe a terror proxy group being facilitated to do something and maybe, like you say, destroy an area. But it's crazy when you think about the age and the time that we live in. You know, it's not crazy when we look at it in prophetic terms, but I don't know about you. I never actually thought I would start to see these things play out. I probably in my head had positioned the rapture some years back, thinking I
Yeah.
would already be raptured by now. Um, so Alistair's asked, has anyone noticed that those that follow Lucifer have their kids coming out as models for a short season? Ivanka also did that. I think that's the satanic baptism, so to speak. I don't know much about this. No.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know celebrities' kids. I mean, I couldn't
Yeah,
tell
me
you who's
neither.
who.
Me neither. I listen. I've got five kids like you, and I struggle to get their names right. So
I run through the list like, da, 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 oh, finally you get the right name. So
I'll run through the list and then get to the dog's name and think, yeah, I'll just settle with that. That's fine. Jack has asked, is the prophecy against Damascus in Jeremiah 49 the same as the Isaiah 17 prophecy?
Hmm. Damascus is while you look that up, Damascus is always kind of a enigma to me. We know that it gets destroyed,
Yeah,
and yet right now we're seeing this new guy come in, and it seems like they're on the up and up. And that's not hard when you've been Syria for the last 15 years. It's not that hard to get any kind of momentum in the positive direction, right?
yeah,
Um, but I think somehow they end up betraying Israel, and Israel, I think Israel maybe nukes them or something, but makes an example out of them. And somehow that ties in with Gog and Magog. I don't, or even Jeremiah 49. Like when it talks about breaking the bow of Elam, and I know this is kind of silly thinking about it, but when you look at like behind you, you look at the map of Iran, where Fordo is. It seems like it's kind of in the cradle of that bow. Like Iran is shaped like a bow on the Persian Gulf side, and when he breaks the bow, you're breaking that ability to launch projectiles
yeah,
against an enemy, right? And so what I mentioned with David Fiorosa, that interview I did with him, those bombs, those 30,000-pound bombs, they're not designed to explode on the surface. They're designed to explode like 200 feet underground. So once they penetrate the ground and they go down to a certain depth, that's when they release their payload, which comes out in the form of a shock wave,
hmm,
not necessarily fire. So it would liquefy anything that's in there that's biological for sure. But even systems, everything would just be crushed, destroyed. And I think they dropped 12 of the 14 bombs there at Fordo. That place is soup under it's like radioactive
yeah,
soup under there. There's not going to be anything usable ever again
yeah,
in that place. I don't care what anybody says. Prove me
yeah,
wrong. They have not moved. They didn't get a chance to move their material. They might have some small stockpiles in other parts of the country that they've built up over the years, but that was their main engine right there to drive their nuclear program. and that thing is gone. So now they're having to scramble, look at other options. I was
Hmm.
hopeful that Khomeini would be replaced and the IRGC would be replaced, but it doesn't seem that that's played out just yet. So, and I don't know if the Iranian people have it in them to rise up. So, I think Iran stays hostile to Israel and it survives in some form or fashion, not like it's been. I don't know that the Khomeini ever comes out of hiding. He's probably going to die in hiding. Um, but whoever takes over for him is still going to keep that same animus. In the same time, I do think that this whole time is allowed. It's been a window for Christians in Iran to flee, to get out of there, and where they flee to, I have no idea. But Armenia and some other places are still predominantly Christian. I think
Hmm.
they would be welcoming of other Christians that come in. But with that said, I think that the bow of Elam has been broken. I think
Yeah.
what now remains is Damascus being destroyed, and then Gog Magog. And so, but again, Israel could nuke it. They could. There's some thermobaric type of weapon systems that they have that also detonate inside of facilities and infrastructures that leave the structure in place but kill everything inside of it. Or they bomb it, and there's stuff underneath Damascus that has been stored up there by Bashar Assad over the decades, bombs, chemical weapons, stuff that Saddam Hussein was hiding, back before we invaded in the 90s, after the Gulf War, but before 9/11, he was moving stuff over there to his Bashar Assad was an ally, political ally. They're both Baathists.
Hmm.
So I think when whatever hits Damascus is going to light all that stuff up underneath there, and it is going to be radio. It's going to be chemical, biological. I mean, you're not going to want to get
Yeah.
anywhere near that place. So somehow that ties in with Gog and Magog. I don't know before how when that plays out, but we know that it happens. We just don't know exactly when it happens.
Well, there's been historically partial destructions in terms of, like, Damascus has had attacks upon it, but it's not been to the point of being of a Isaiah 17 where it's a wasteland and it's uninhabited. So, in terms of what that question was, in Jeremiah 49, it says, why is the city of praise, talking about Damascus, not deserted, the city of my joy? Therefore, her young men shall fall in her streets, and all the men of war shall be cut off in that day, says the Lord of hosts. I will kindle a fire in the wall of Damascus, and it shall consume the palaces of Ben Hadad. So I don't know if that. See, certainly if we go back and we look at Ammon, there was an attack and a destruction towards Ammon. There was one towards Edom, but not full destructions. And what you see in terms of prophecy is quite often the Moedim figure is in like a partial fulfillment. Like if we talk about Antiochus the Fourth, that's a prelude. It's not full fulfillment of the abomination
Yeah.
of desolation, but it's kind of a picture of it to come. So I don't know what your thoughts are. Do you think that, because that's in Jeremiah 49 and then comes Elam? So I would kind of look at that then in the way Jeremiah 49 is written as probably being consecutive, and therefore that's talking about, because I don't see within this. I don't see, maybe I'm reading this wrong, I don't see a complete destruction. It says judgment upon Damascus, but I don't see a complete destruction of Damascus. I don't know what your thoughts are
Yeah.
there.
Well, it makes sense. Um, it makes sense in terms of the justification for the provocation by Turkey, since they've invested years in flipping Syria and putting their people in charge, and finally, claiming that as part of the greater Turkish Empire. Like they did in their march back in January, they had to sign the Hagia Sophia, the largest Christian church. They converted to a mosque. Then they've taken over now this whatever mosque in Damascus, which belonged to the Umayyad Empire. And then the next one is obviously the Temple Mount. So it could be that Israel does strike Damascus ahead of time for
Mhm.
some reason unknown to us just yet, and that becomes incredibly personal to Erdogan and to his son and to that whole movement. so that when the U.S. does collapse at the rapture, or Western civilization rather, that then becomes like, that's like kind of the final straw. Like that is what, or we're
Yeah.
going to do this from Turkey's perspective, right, and from Iran's perspective. Now, Russia, I think, gets roped into this because they've been allied to them for so long, and they make up some deal like, hey, we're going to split the natural gas, we're going to split the oil, we're going to split the Dead Sea minerals, we're going to split all that, plus all the wealth that Israel has and all their technology and their desalinization technology, all of that stuff. So they're already shopping in their mind. They're already thinking what they want and how they're going to carve this up. And they would have already done it, except the U.S. has been here. The U.S. has been in the picture, and nobody wants to cross that line just yet. Not to that level, you know, and especially not under a guy like Trump. They might have done that under Biden had Kamala won this term. In fact, I'm pretty sure that Taiwan would probably be already be taken by the Chinese in some form or fashion. All these other conflicts would have already kicked off because the world, the enemies of the United States, is not going to sit around and wait for the U.S. to elect some competent guy to come in. They're going to take advantage, like they did under Biden's term.
Yeah.
The withdrawal from Afghanistan was the star cluster that was shot up to the world saying, hey, now is the time, whatever you're going to do. And I would have thought that China would have already tried to take Taiwan, but they haven't. And I think that has more to do with China's internal, the corruption that they've discovered within their military. Like a lot of their artillery shells were filled with water, like their missiles were filled with water. Like a lot of this stuff is just dog and pony show because they're so terrified of Xi Jinping. And Xi Jinping has done a masterful job of removing anybody that could potentially replace him. So he's consolidated all power within himself. So when he's gone, China's going to be in a mess for a while. And I do think
Mhm.
a more moderate person will come forward because they're tired of how Xi has been so domineering on everything, I think. And then once China has this newer, gentler, kinder leader, I think then they will make those amends with Taiwan. Taiwan could have an earthquake, just like if it's a mega quake in Japan, that's going to impact Taiwan. China could
Yeah.
come in and say, "Hey, we're here to support you guys. We're just here to bring in food, water, blankets." They could open the doors that way, and then do kind of like a Hong Kong thing where they take them over
Yeah.
that way, and that way they preserve the technology that Taiwan possesses without all the destruction that goes along with it. So they're still trying to get Taiwan. I think the military option is for show. I don't think that they really have the will to go ahead and take Taiwan right now with the United States and the West backing her. It's just too big a sacrifice, and I don't think they're gonna bite just yet.
Do you not think it all sounds a little bit like the playground? That you're kind of pushing with that person, and that person's pushing back. You got the people going, go for it, that
Yeah, yeah,
sort of
yeah.
thing. I was looking today, and Iran still at this point are saying they still might close. Now, I don't think they can now. And I think they would have struggled initially. They can certainly cause disruption to oil production, and we've seen that the market already fluctuate. But they said that they're still going to close the strait. They're still considering closing the Strait of Hormuz. Um, and I kind of just think that they're at this point where it's kind of like the person who's been in a fight, got completely and utterly flattened, down in the ground, bloodied, but is still giving it that, still talking for, like all the rhetoric. And I don't know, it
It's
just seems this is,
it's a flesh wound. It's a flesh wound. He's hopping around with no arms, no legs.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's what they are right now. They're basically just the mouthpiece, but they still have significant sway with the Shia populations in the Middle East and around the world. So, I mean, they still look at Khomeini as kind of their spiritual mentor, father, leader, whatever. So I think I think Iran in terms of they might do stuff through proxy now, like they've kind of the
yeah.
asymmetric warfare they've done throughout their history since '79.
Uh-huh.
I don't know that they do anything further against Israel necessarily. They got a $40 million bounty on Trump. I don't think
Yeah,
that's going to equate to anything just yet. But he's always had a bounty on his head, I'm sure.
yeah,
But I just see Iran in a very weakened state. Russia has been weakened from this kind of contracted war that with Ukraine against NATO, and they may want to conclude that on their own terms, where they just kind of drop a nuke in the middle of Ukraine and said, "Hey, if you want it, you can have it," and it's boom,
Yeah.
and then that's it, and then that's the end of that conflict. They basically everybody pulls back. Um, things are ramped up to the what is it the clock striking midnight or whatever. It's going to get like right there, and then they'll talk it down, and then everything will seem to kind of cool down, and then boom, the rapture, right? And then Russia's thinking, well, shoot, man, the United States they can't do anything. I mean, their cities are called chaos right now. They can't even manage their own country. UK chaos, Western Europe chaos. Any country that has been solely dependent on the U.S. for trade or financial stability, etc., political protection, military protection, chaos. And that is going to be too big an opportunity for those three countries, Russia, Iran, and Turkey, to pass up against Israel,
Mhm.
because now Israel will truly be alone. The only advantage they have now is they've taken out that immediate ring around them: Hamas,
Yeah. Yeah.
Hezbollah, the Houthis to a large degree. And I still think that they're going to annex the Judea and Samaria, West
Mhm.
Bank area, and so they can drive out all of those inter country terrorist gangs there. So
That would
that's
be a
coming.
fulfillment.
That
Yeah. That's a
yeah.
fulfillment of Zechariah 12 that way. Yeah. We got a question here. Do you both have the same barber? Both of you all have great looking hair. We have great looking hair, apparently. It's because we're starting a middle-aged boy band or a middle-aged.
Oh, this is not middle age. This is like old
Yeah,
age, right?
yeah.
Are we considered old now? I think I'm old.
I just keep
So
listen. You just keep adding on it or get taken away. It's fine. Age is relative.
50 is the new 30, right?
Yeah.
Although I,
Um,
I will say this, I feel much better at 50 than I did at 30. So
I think
physically,
it's
like,
well. I was saying to my wife, I started because when I used to train, I was always training for fights, so I always had to manage. It was kind of I liked training, but I hated it at the same time because I always had to manage my weight. So I was always can't go above 10.5 stone. If I go above 10.5 stone, I can't fight. Now I don't fight anymore. I'm enjoying the training, and like I'm enjoying the weights and I'm enjoying running and stuff again, and I actually feel an awful lot better for it. And I had a lot
yeah.
more injuries when I was training when I was younger than I do now. Um,
Bubba wants
and
us to go bald.
what was that? Go bald.
Bubba wants us to go bald.
Listen, when I used to fight, I don't know if I can share this. Um, I looked for any advantage, so I used to shave all my hair off. So I go down, not just like a number one or a zero. I would get the Bic razor and I would shave it off. And yeah, I'll tell you this story. Just bear in mind this may look bad. This is not bad. I was not meaning to do this. Right? I was fighting in another country, and I'm just going to be ambiguous about this. And I used to go across. This was when I was amateur. I used to go across, and I used to not bring anybody with me before I had a manager. I just fight in my own, and that was it. And so I didn't have any corner staff. I didn't have anybody to do my corner, and I was fighting an individual with dreadlocks and all of this. So this is me, bald, right, completely white. The team that were picking me up went and picked me corner men, and they happened to pick two skinheads dressed in all the regalia, right, in my corner, and I am fighting
Oh
an
man.
individual who comes out to African drums, and I just thought, see, before this fight starts, so this is terrible. If I win, this just looks really bad. But yeah, so I used to shave my head all the time in the theory that it would just make me look scary, but just apparently made me look like I was a racist, and I wasn't. So um, Annette has asked, Gary, can you teach a class on street ministry and all you might encounter or deal with? Yes, 100% I will. By the way, looking pretty tan for an Irish ginger. Thank you. Pete, so this is from Jason. I believe the elite know judgment is coming, and that's why they are trying to go to Mars. Hence Obadiah 1:4. Your thoughts, please, on the scripture and leaving the planet. While you look it
Good.
up, I'll say it actually does make sense when you look at this, because we know that in Revelation 6 that they're hiding. We know that Joshua 10 is a prophetic picture of the kings hiding and trying to conceal themselves away from judgment. And any way in which they want or they think they can escape judgment, they're going to. But I'll hand over to you when you're ready.
So this is the vision of Obadiah. Thus says the Lord God concerning Edom. So we're talking about what is like Jordan now, right? And a messenger has been sent among the nations, saying, Arise, and let us rise up against her for battle. Behold, I will make you small among the nations, and you shall be greatly despised. The pride of your heart has deceived you. You dwell in the clefts of the rock, whose habitation is high, and you say in your heart, Who will bring me down to the ground? And though you ascend as high as the eagle, and though you set your nest among the stars, from there I will bring you down, says the Lord. Ah, yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Maybe it's not so poetic after all. Apocalyptic literature, all the stuff they accuse prophecy of being.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that when you read through Revelation, it after you get past chapter 4, or really in chapter 3 too, but it talks about the people who dwell on the earth and the earth dwellers, uh, and there's uh, uh, a clear identification that people are confined to the earth. They're not able to go off planet. So the fact that this technology and this drive to go to Mars, even though we will never go to Mars, right, not this side of the rapture, that that drive to get off planet, I think, is also part and parcel. Like they feel like if we get off planet, we will no longer be under this judgment because that belongs to the earth dwellers. And so God can't break his word, right? So if I'm on Mars, there's nothing to say about Mars. They're trying to
Hmm.
game the system. And I
Yeah.
think Satan is using this. Now, again, look at Satan, right? Satan is a interdimensional being along with the fallen angels. He's
Hmm.
not bound by the physical constraints of our universe and reality. He can go anywhere he wants right now. In fact, we know that he goes to heaven, he goes before God and is constantly throwing accusations against us
Yeah.
because we're the bride, and he's constantly he's called the accuser, right? That's his name. Um, he knows that at the midpoint he is going to be confined to the earth. So I think he is working through guys now these to develop the technology to escape the earth
Hmm.
because again Satan is trying to game the system, and God has staked his entire name, his word, his everything on the Bible. And it talks about that in Psalms that he places his word above even his name. And so if Revelation is super specific about those who dwell on the earth and the earth dwellers are going to be condemned, et cetera, and now they have a way to get off the earth, you don't think that that's God's going to let that Tower of Babel moment happen? He's not.
Yeah.
He's going to cut that short, and something will happen. Now we know inside of the tribulation, we see these stars falling. We see the fire coming from the sky. I mean, the atmosphere seems to be all kinds of chewed up at that point.
Hmm.
There could be solar storms. I mean, there could be all manner of things we don't even know about that are implied in Scripture, but are not fully fleshed out in the text of Revelation. It does seem to imply that with things like the whole planet being consumed. And I think when that happens, when the Earth is renovated by fire, it could be the sun supernova going supernova and just consumes everything. And
Yeah.
then what's left, God restores the planet and restores the sun, much smaller. We don't need the sun anymore for the light. God is the light, etc.
Hmm.
So it seems to me that Satan is influencing these people to find a way off the planet because if they do so, they will somehow find an escape from the coming judgment, which I don't think they're going to be able to do that prior to.
Yeah. Um,
Hmm.
I'm trying to see these questions. Only Jesus says, which one was the dead church in Revelation? Sardis. Yes, it is Sardis. Um, Asset Ministries. Or no, so God bless us, everyone. Have either, sorry, I know you got me glasses. I was reading downstairs, you see, before I came up. And
There you
yeah, thanks. I'll take it.
go.
Do you know they done this on my birthday? They bought me 10 sets of glasses and they're all sitting at the. Oh, hold on a minute. I've got a
You
random
gotta
pair.
hide them. You
I've
gotta
got.
hide them from yourself so that you find them and you're like, oh wow, some glasses.
Oh, no, these ones are broken. Hold on.
Mhm.
Have
You want me to
either of
read
you.
it?
Can you see. No, hold on. Have either of you seen The Smartest Man in the World
Yes.
video where he proves his analysis of why Jesus would be returning soon? I haven't seen it. Have you?
I mean, I've seen the. Haven't watched the video. I've just seen the picture of him and his quote on there. But I can watch it tonight.
No, I haven't seen it. I can make this one bigger. Hold on. Our Whisperer said, what do you think the chances are someone will use an EMP in the near future?
Probably a very strong chance that that'll happen.
Yeah.
I think in term because right now, think about it this way: we have so many different internet systems, we have so many different ways to connect and sources for internet that if the beast system has got to gain control of the whole world, he's going to have to gain control of one, make it all one internet system.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Starlink is up right now around the Earth, and there's I don't know how many 8,000 satellites or however many there are floating around right now. Um, it seems that some of that is destroyed during the seal judgments. That that is part and parcel why they can't go to Mars is because their satellites are destroyed. But there has to be some kind of an internet system that connects the mark of the beast to everything in the world. So whatever that system is, it seems like an EMP would be a good crisis for them to shut everything down and then open everything back up under one system. And now it's all Starlink or it's all, whatever. Now it's all under one control system. So that will happen at some point. I
Could
don't know. The rapture could trigger an EMP type event. We don't know.
what about Apophis? So even if Apophis, the like I think it's 13th of April 2029 is the closest flyby it has, and I know that initially sorry, Tom Horn and others and NASA initially, I think about 2004 or something, had predicted a much closer, maybe an impact zone. But even if it's not an impact zone, it's the likelihood that they've said from NASA is that it will knock out an awful lot of satellites. Could that then, like you say, bring everything under one system? Like so many
Mhm.
satellites are destroyed, so they bring them under the one system.
There's something passing by the Earth in October, and they've noted it's coming from outside of the solar system. It's moving
Okay.
incredibly fast, and they are, if I'm not mistaken, it's somewhere out near uh, Saturn, somewhere in that vicinity. But it's going to pass by Earth, and
Is
that'll
it
happen in October. They don't know what it is. It doesn't seem to have a tail like a
okay?
traditional comet. And I have to do some more digging on this, and I'm sure guys like Josh Peck and all them probably already know about it. But I'll have to do some more research. But I know that they have spotted something, and it's coming towards Earth in the general vicinity of Earth. I don't know how close that
Yeah.
could have some kind of effect on the sun. I mean, we don't know. I mean, we're starting to see like there's a lot of stuff happening around the solar system that we don't fully understand yet.
Well, that kind of goes in
There's stuff.
earlier to what we were talking off like this afternoon when when we were on the phone and we were saying the closeness of things. Like obviously neither of us date set, but
I love date
like
setting.
well, well, like you had said before, that there is this window that seems to be available, as in like a time frame. Um, that would fit in terms of what you were saying earlier. And I know I'm being ambiguous. Sorry, guys, but that would fit in terms of what you were saying earlier, and how close things are. Do you
Yeah.
think? Do you think then, like the rest of 2025? See, you know the theory that I gave at the conference of the countdown. I see 2025 as having a major destructive event, right? And I may be
Mhm.
wrong, but I've got a reason behind that. Do you think we're going to see something like major events, like much more than what we've seen in the first 6 months? Do you think it's going to get more so in the last six?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, imagine, I mean, what did we didn't even get to this year and we were in December and we had all that crazy fog happening and then we had those things flying around, these massive drones, and then there was those
Forgot all about those. Yeah,
balls of light that were like shape shifting in the sky and it was all over and people were freaking out. And then we went straight from that into these massive California wildfires that basically destroyed most of Los Angeles. And then
that's
we went
right.
from
Yeah.
that into this crazy tornado season, where just, I mean, it's just been crazy with tornadoes. Like, I don't even know what the average is. I don't know what the average is, but I know that we're well above that average this year. And then straight from that into massive flooding, and there's like 300 plus flooding events right now around the world. And
Mm-hmm.
then we're starting to do
Jeremiah
this
49.
correlation with the
Yeah.
salinity down in Antarctica and the possible underground volcanic activity that's releasing massive amounts of carbon that's now impacting the equator and changing the La Nina, El Nino phenomena. So think about to 2017. I don't remember which cycle we were in, but we were definitely in this like transition between La Nina and El Nino,
Mm-hmm.
and that produced a ton of hurricanes that year: Irma, Maria, Harvey, a bunch. And I think we'll see more than that, more hurricanes like that this year, like 2017 timeframe, but worse because we're already compounding. They haven't even finished rebuilding California. I mean, North Carolina is still,
Yeah.
being repaired. Central Texas, they hadn't even finished finding all the survivors, and they had another flood event. So I
Yeah.
think that these things are going to keep ramping up. And if the next thing on the queue, we're in the hurricane season now. Really, the only thing that would tamp that down is that if there was the continuation of that Saharan dust that comes over from North Africa every year, that tampers down. As much as we hate the dust, it tampers down the hurricanes that are forming off the coast of Africa, those tropical disturbances that begin to come off the coast around the equator. So my answer is yes. I think things are going to continue to get worse. Um, and as bad as things seem to be getting now, multiply that times 10 inside of the tribulation time period,
Yeah.
and it is far. People are, I think the thing I was trying to drive at both Sunday and then last night was that the people tend to underestimate the threat that is before them when they can't see it with their own eyes. And I would say most of the world right now is completely underestimating what the rapture is going to actually, how that's going to change the world, and it will change the world forever.
Yeah.
And people right now look at it as a joke. Even people that look at disasters and crisis and all that stuff for a living think about the rapture as kind of a joke. It's like, that's never going to happen. It's the most unbelievable, ridiculous thing on the planet, and yet that's the thing that God is going to use to deliver the church from this time, as well as plunge the world into this incredible time of darkness that
Mm-hmm.
people really can't wrap their minds around because we live in this normalcy bias. We think the way
Yeah.
the world is today, as bad as things seem, it's still the normal world, right?
Yeah.
Imagine the rapture removing whatever the percentage of people is from the planet. Now, the spiritual veil that had separated the physical world and the spiritual world, now that's gone, and things are coming out of. I mean, it is going to be surreal, like what people are going to go through during that time, and I think we even here, us in our community, we really kind of underestimate how bad it's going to be. And if we really believed what we said we believed, we would be out telling every single person,
Yeah.
regardless, without abandon. But the
Mm-hmm.
problem is we don't know, right? We don't know if it's now or it's 10 years from now or 100 years from now. I know it's not that long, but
Yeah.
we don't know specifically. But what I mentioned earlier at lunch, God loves to do things at the last minute. And if
Yeah,
you look through history, it's always like this last minute miraculous rescue. And if we are in this window and if this window is legit, then I would think that it would be the last minute of that window. So I think this year, last year, I mean, really every year since 2020 has been, earth shattering in some regard to some
mhm,
particular category of life and as we know it. It's something that's fundamentally changed. Even COVID sped the world up by 6 years technologically.
yeah,
Where we are today, we shouldn't even be where we are today until like next year. Or where we are in like say 2021, 2022. We shouldn't have gotten there with Zoom and Teams and the bandwidth and all the technological advances we've done. We shouldn't get there until like next year, but we're already
yeah.
there. We've been there for a couple of years now. So things are speeding up. And I think that also is playing out in the natural world.
I think that the thing that sort of hit me there as you were speaking, I've always got my eyes on what's coming and things like that, that I kind of forget how much we've actually seen, how many things that have actually happened. And then that sort of just hit with me. When the rapture happens, how long is it before those who are left behind start to forget the significance of what that event left? And then start to believe the delusion and the strong delusion across the world at that time. It's it's amazing that our brains have kind of been trained right now into short-term recall, that you kind of, well, what happened in 2022, 2023, 2024? You start to forget these big things that have happened because you're looking ahead, and it's a preconditioning for what's coming as opposed to what's happened. It kind of goes into the Hegelian dialectic again, that way of forgetting
Mhm.
the past too. Um, do you think, Suez asked, do you think a lot of
Mhm.
weapons used in the 12-day war were to dry up a stockpile for further aggressions?
Could another 12-day war dry up stockpiles for another?
No, I
What?
think the question is that, was this a case of just attacking Iran to try and dry up, get rid of all the weapons so that there can be another incursion, like another attack from Israel?
Oh, I don't know. I think the whatever justification they've had to attack Israel or to attack Iran was so specific regarding the military sites, the nuclear sites, and then military leaders.
Mm.
I don't know that I don't know that they expended, really that. I mean, I know that they dropped a lot of bombs on Iran, but it's not like they went into it like Gaza, with tanks
Yeah,
and soldiers dying and bullets and all the other logistics that go into close quarters combat. So I don't think Israel is exhausted that much just yet, and we've already probably resupplied them
hmm,
between then and now. I'm sure there's already been deals hammered out for that. Um, but Israel, we got to remember when the time comes for Gog and Magog, they have to be living securely, in unwalled villages.
yeah,
And by that I mean I think that the only way that they can have unwalled villages is if they annex all of Judea and Samaria and make the whole country Israel, and then they can
yeah,
kind of control everything that way. That's the only way they get to unwalled villages. Are they living in a time of pure peace and nobody hates them? No, but it's going to be kind of like normal. But now Israel would be put back together, and they're not living in walled communities inside of their own country anymore. It's going to be more uh, unified. And I think that is the state of Israel prior to Gog and Magog. How that uh, goes from where we are today to when that becomes a reality, I'm sure it's going to go in stages, right? And one little thing here, one little thing there, one little bit here, a little bit there, and then boom, the rapture, and things will kind of just start to fall in place exactly like God said they would. But Satan doesn't want that to happen. Satan doesn't want the church to know about the rapture, so he's suppressed that via all these false teachings and false doctrines. He suppressed the significance of Israel, going even back to the time of Martin Luther. the time when the church was reforming and breaking away from the papal authority of Rome, they also brought with them all this baggage that would ultimately create, anti-Semitism within the Christendom in the form of replacement theology. So now 400, 500 years later, churches are completely dumbed down. They don't really know what Israel is. They know Israel was important back in Moses' day, but not, after
Yeah.
Jesus. And they tend to not even think of Jesus as being Jewish. He's just Middle Eastern now. And, some undefinable ethnic background. Maybe he was Samaritan, whatever. They'll come up with some kind of ways to make him not fully Jewish.
Hmm.
And then, it's where we are today at the time when the church should be the most alive, the most awake, the most on fire. Right before the Lord comes back, they're the most dead, the most
Yeah.
asleep, and the most lukewarm. Like it's just a complete letdown. And I'm sure from Christ's perspective, he already saw how this would play out because he gave us the seven letters. And if those seven letters do forecast the stages of the church, then even then at the beginning saying that, I'm sure that was bittersweet because he would want everybody to come. He would want every church to be like Philadelphia, but they're not. They're
Yeah.
all wrapped up in their own little, dramas and stuff.
But it's funny how they used the letter to the church in Philadelphia to kind of facilitate anti-Semitism. When we talk about Revelation 3:9, the synagogue of Satan, I done a teaching of this, and because I just put up a video of this, so to cover my time away, and
Mm.
I woke up one morning and I just had a load of emails. I think I deleted 15 of them because they were using swear words, and I just have a right. If you're going to swear at me, off you go. But then others, just absolute nonsense, nonsensical arguments because I was breaking it down hermeneutically how Revelation 3:9 is in the context of to the church. The synagogue is not referring to the re-establishment of an Israeli nation in 1948. It's not referring to that. You can't then argue that and then argue against them being the real Jews in the first place. So it was this absolute nonsense. But I think that for me, this seems to be kind of a line in the sand for the church. The anti-Semitic or the anti-Zionist thing. The idea of so many of my Christian brothers and sisters who've adopted replacement theology. I find it I find it absolutely shocking when I'm going online and people are saying he was a Palestinian. Like the term didn't exist at that point, so don't tell
Yeah.
me he was a Palestinian. But it's just yeah, I could go off on one, but I won't. I'll do the last question here. Hold on. So Jay has asked, with thousands of stores closing every year, how close do you think we are to the mark? Probably having to order everything online, that sort of thing. So before
Yeah.
before you say anything, I will point out that the UK government today, was it today or yesterday? Anyway, they came into this. They came up with this idea in regards to the immigration issue that they're going to issue digital IDs to all those crossing on the boats, that are coming in illegally. They're going to give them digital IDs. That way they can track them. And I'm kind of like, well, can anybody else see what's going on here? But I'll let you crack on with that.
Yeah, it's something that I've been keeping an eye on for the last, I don't know, 20 years, really. It's always struck me as like the stores that I grew up with that you think would be around forever. Eckerd's, used to be a drugstore. Uh, I posted in Facebook that the kind of a joke about Long John Silver's, like there's a secret society keeping that restaurant chain alive because like nobody ever eats there. Uh, Circuit City, Toys R Us, I mean Radio Shack. I mean, I know there's a couple Radio Shacks left, but like you can go on and on. Woolworths, Mervyn's, I don't say Dillard's, but like Sears and Roebuck. I mean,
Yeah.
Sears, the massive Sears was massive. It just seems like the world has turned into this like giant Rust Belt, or at least America has turned into this giant Rust Belt nation, where everything is shutting down, the doors are shuttering, and everything is changing to some new thing that you buy online or from some other country. So I do think that the closing of brick and mortar stores is absolutely critical. It's one of those underreported things that nobody really thinks about. But if you want to control all buying and selling, it's much easier to control one system that sells everything than tens of thousands of little systems that sell, whatever. And that's the same way with nations. It's easier to control 10 nations or regions than it is to control 193. So I do see it as a consolidation, a drawing down, and the forcing of everything moving to digital. Um, it's that the store closing and stuff, that stuff has been ongoing for decades, but it just seems like these companies are either having to convert completely over to this new system, or they're just fading out into irrelevance. So
Yeah.
part of it, but not the whole thing.
I think your prime example for that would be Amazon. And I don't want to get into trouble for saying Amazon, but they if you're looking for something now, I don't even know, I'm guilty of it. I don't go to the independent, even online. I now don't go to the independent stores. I just type it into Amazon and see what if they've got it, because I know I'll get a quick delivery, and then I've got that ability to refund it and all of that. And then you look at what Amazon did with, was it the Amazon One, where
Yeah.
they have the shop and that you can buy everything with the hand and it's just your biometrics, and it kind of shows you, to me, a template that this is going to be the setup, this sort of, this system of everything being brought into one or a few conglomerates, that easier to control. And then oh, guess what, it's your biometrics that we need,
Yeah.
it's this mark
Yeah.
that we need to just use everything. But I think that is all of the questions. I think so. Anyway, and listen, it's been great having you on. I know that you're really just starting your evening now. It's what's it? What's it now?
6:30.
6:30. So it's
Yeah.
11:30 here. So um, don't go. We love this. Listen, do you know what? I'll have a nap. Pete can continue. I'll have a nap. It's
Yeah.
just, uh, it's not as bad. We done the round table um, with LA and Kurt and all of that, and that was at 3 a.m. my time. And I actually,
Oh man,
yeah,
well, the one we did there that night, the last one we did while we were there, you were
oh
fading, man,
yeah,
and you were like struggling.
it
You
was. We're sitting in your room, and it was Lee, then there was, I was beside Kurt, and then I noticed I leaned back off camera and I was like this to you. I'm done. I'm just done. It was, I think it was just, a lot of things that happened that day, that night. I was just exhausted. And then I didn't get it, how much energy you actually have, because I was running you to the airport at like 4 a.m. And I was thinking, right, I'll drive back, have a sleep. And I did. And then I'll drive back to get you, and you can sleep in the van while I take you to the airport. But you were wide awake. You were just like, yeah, yeah. And you guys kept going for like another hour or 2 hours afterwards. I don't know. I don't think I have the stamina anymore. Maybe it's with getting older or whatever. But yeah, no, it's been great having you on, and
Yeah.
we'll have you
Are
on
we
again.
gonna see you in October?
Yeah, yeah. So I'll be coming.
Okay.
Are you going to run me around?
Yeah, I plan on taking the time off, and whatever. I'm gonna make that the priority. So the one in the end of September in Rockwall, Texas, I'll be there with Tom, and then the one in Prophecy Watchers, I'll be there for that one. So um, even if I have to quit this job I mean, I'm gonna be back there doing that. So like that's
Yeah.
my I might be flipping burgers after that, but whatever. I'm gonna make it. I will be there, and I'm gonna find a way to stay back in Texas. So
Yeah.
that's the goal, anyways. Maybe I'll win the
Well,
lottery between now and then.
Well, if you do, remember that you've got this Irish friend who.
So I saw some, I don't know where I saw it, but somebody had posted like, uh, this guy's all like, dressed in a suit and everything, and he's like, God, I want that kind of problem where you just dump this ridiculous amount of money on me to see how I handle it. Like I want that kind of problem. Yeah.
Oh, do
So,
you know what?
but yeah.
I've heard Christians say before that if someone wins the lottery and that's from gambling and they wouldn't accept, any sort of that's absolute nonsense. If someone wins the lottery in your church and they decide to tithe on it, you'll be going, yes, please. And don't forget the pastor, and
It's
don't forget.
it sucks, it sucks that that everything now has become so money centric. Like I hate money. I hate
Yeah,
talking about it. I hate the fact that
I
we need
don't
it.
like it in the
I
church.
hate that
That's
it
all.
drives people to do ridiculous things, but you got to pay the electric bill, you got to pay for gas, you got to pay for
Yeah,
food. I mean, like there's no free lunch anymore. Tan
I
Staffel.
re- I remember when we started the church, and I've told this story a load of times, but I was told by another pastor, run it like a business, and I felt immediately sick inside because I thought I'm not running anything. I've got a business. I'm not running the church like a business, and so we didn't, and we never have. And then something hit me in the last maybe year when we had like our rent increased 30% and a load of bills came in. And then I'm going, oh no, the church, because we've been a church that whatever comes in goes out. We go out onto the street, we go out and we feed people, we have a food bank, we do all of that. And then I realized we're doing all of that, but we haven't paid the bills yet. We haven't paid the rent yet. So it was kind of, there was that element where I'd put my head in the sand and going, right, we'll never run it like a business, and we don't. But then the other side of going, oh right, yeah, I've still got to pay the bills. I can't,
Yeah.
you still got to pay, and you've got to have the roof, to have the light, and to have somewhere to actually preach from. But yeah, well, look, I could keep talking, that. And
Yeah.
usually when we're on the phone, we're just talking for a long time. So I'm going to let you go because there's only one way to say it. It's past my bedtime, guys. So,
All right.
all
It's
right,
good
guys.
being on with you, man.
God bless everyone, and I'll see you tomorrow for Bible study.